You're listening to the Master Wildlife Filmmaking Podcast, Episode 30. As Senior Vice President of Development and Production at Nat Geo Wild, Janet Han Vissering is responsible for over 200 hours of programming commissioned each year for broadcast in 166 countries, 330 million homes, and 34 languages worldwide. In her role, Janet oversees the premium natural history and animal-focused slates for all of National Geographic's global networks and SVOD platforms, which includes National Geographic, Nat Geo Wild, and Disney+. She closely manages Wild's development team, working with the world's leading independent producers, distributors, creative agencies, and strategic broadcast partners to create the network's signature series, specials, and events. She also provides daily oversight of production to ensure creative continuity and that all network programming objectives are being met, from project conception through delivery. Previously, she was Senior Vice President of Strategic Development and Co-Finance for 7 years. As part of her development role, Janet has been responsible for creating key programs such as Savage Kingdom, The Incredible Dr. Pole, Caesar 911, Animal Fight Night, Wild Brazil, and Destination Wild, among other highly rated shows. Hi, Janet. Thank you so much for taking the time out to be on the Master Wildlife Filmmaking Podcast this morning. How are you?
I'm doing fabulously well. My sinuses is telling me that we are right in the heat of spring. That's usually my barometer of like whether or not we've gone from one season to another. But that and the color of the pollen that has completely encapsulated my car tells me we are in spring. So I'm really happy about that because it's sunny, 70 degrees outside, and minus my sinuses right now. I'm really happy.
Oh, fantastic. Well, as we're talking about these things, I should say I had my second COVID injection yesterday, and so I'm feeling fluey this morning. So we can just chat away and see how we go. And if one of us has to disappear for any reason, then I'll just edit that out. That'll be fine. So
Hey, that's the beauty of being the commander and the editing button there. So
right.
let's see how we go. We're a duo here.
Fantastic. Well, as always, Janet, this podcast is about really showing aspiring filmmakers how the top people in the industry got into this industry. Was it just a straightforward, left school, left college, and ended up doing exactly what they wanted to do, or was it this twisty, windy road that I think most of us end up in this industry from? So I'm just going to start right there. What was your journey that led to this point?
Wow. Well, I know that this is like a half hour-ish podcast, so I'll try to truncate everything. The first and foremost, if those of us, those listeners or any of your listeners don't know, I'm actually a Korean American. So I was born in Korea. My parents immigrated when I was 2 years old to America. So I'm technically first generation immigrant here. And, I grew up in the Maryland area. My parents immigrated and went straight to Maryland, and we lived in the suburbs of Maryland. And, having that pressure of first generation immigrant, daughter, and I was also the eldest child. I was also the eldest granddaughter. So the list goes on of a lot of pressure to do the right thing for your parents. And thus, I had the pressure of you must have what they thought was a status oriented job, something that, I wasn't just getting my degree or my job for myself. It was a way of I think justifying why my parents came to America. So there was
Wow.
a lot of pressure on here. And I was supposedly, the first job that comes out of every parent's mouth, I think, is doctor. They got to be a doctor because it's almost like an automatic acknowledgement that you've made it, or and as an immigrant parent, they they went from being highly educated in Korea to being very blue collar. My father was an auto mechanic, and my mom, her first job in America was to fold laundry at a hospital. And they were in a world that was, their um, education and their way of life was just not recognized. So, but they did it because they felt like, we're here in America, and our daughter will have more chances in life. It's the quintessential immigrant story. And so there was a lot of pressure, and I was supposed to be the doctor of the family, because that was, of course, the easiest occupation that my immigrant parents thought. And there were a lot of other parents who all said, my daughter or son will be a doctor at the ripe old age of 5.
Right.
But as I was in high school, all doing all the science fields, because you've been brainwashed for the better half of your life to be a doctor, right? You are the smart one. Anyhow, until I hit AP Bio. And unfortunately, when I was supposed to dissect a cow's eye as part of, advanced placement bio, I don't know if that's something that's same around the world, but in the
Yep.
US, do that in high school. I remember that scalpel going, I tried to cut open the eye and it just didn't work. And they were like, no, 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 you really need to kind of cut into it and slice it open, Janet. And I did that. And I remember the eyeball kind of like, like this gelatinous, like, and then the next thing I knew, I was on the ground with my classmates
Oh
around me
no.
going, she's awake, she's awake, she's awake. And I was like, what just happened? And happened was I passed out. So the whole medical career thing went out the door. There was no
Right.
way I was going to do that. So I decided, well, then if I can't do that, clearly the science is not calling me. I should be a lawyer. So great. So I was going to be a lawyer. So I went to the University of Maryland, College Park, thinking I was going to be a lawyer, pre-law. I was taking classes in all the appropriate areas, international business and English and all that. And I graduated, and I had a moment of panic where I went and took all the graduate school tests, and I didn't think I wanted to be a lawyer either, and I had to buy time. So I without my parents knowing, I got a job overseas in Korea as a Korean English interpreter and teacher. And
Wow.
so I graduated, and I was supposed to start law school in the fall. And basically, I bailed and I left for Korea in July. And much to my parents, there was a lot of emotion flying,
So
but I really
when did they find out that you were going to Korea? How long did you leave it until you told them?
2 weeks before I left.
Wow.
And I had conspired with my grandparents who lived in Korea, and I just any immigrant family, there's a huge reliance on the eldest child, and I felt like I had this revelation of like, wow, I hadn't really been living what I wanted to do, and I just needed to unplug. At that point, my sister was in her teens and could speak both languages too, and I felt like they had a backup. And at that point, I was helping them with their businesses. And it was almost like a reversal of the parent child relationship. In the English world, I was helping them with their life in an American
Sure.
country. And although they were my parents, so I felt like I need to figure this out. So I left for Korea. Long story short, I ended up in Japan, working, for reasons that is not part of this podcast, but yet another one maybe later. But I
Right.
ended up in Japan. I was working for the Department of Navy there, and then 3 years later, I eloped with my then boyfriend and fiance, came back to America, and again, really headstrong on going back to law school. But my husband was first in graduate school, and as I was contemplating this, I realized maybe law school isn't for me. And I started working with a marketing group, and a guy that was there. And if, funny enough, I realized I was pretty creative. And even as a kid, although my parents did not encourage creativity, it was all about the sciences and very structured academic. Um, I loved, and anyone who knows me, I loved cooking. I love anything that had to do with creativity. I was very entrepreneurial as a kid. Um, And I felt like that business sense and also, creativity and really a lot of mimicry. If I saw something I liked, I would almost reinvent it in my own way. Um, Things like hairpins and they were all things I couldn't afford as a kid. So if I saw a great big bow hairpin, I would try to, like Frankenstein it in the way for a lot less. I loved sunflower seeds, but my parents didn't give me any money to make sunflowers. So I grew sunflowers to make sunflower seeds, and I started selling this to our friends. So I was always slightly entrepreneurial. But I went into like a marketing field, and then I got to know somebody who was working for Discovery Channel in their affiliate sales. And at that time, Discovery Channel was like all on one floor. They had just moved into Bethesda, and literally like they were thinking about launching a channel called the Learning Channel. And back then it was really the Learning Channel. We were talking about how learning has to be incorporated in our thing. And we had a singer named Rory who they wanted to launch, and it was really about takeaway learning experience, slight change from where they are now. But they wanted somebody who was in marketing and who could communicate, their mission. And so I applied and I got a job there. So I was in affiliate sales. So I was in marketing, now lawyer, and I had bought more time because I said my husband's in grad school. I can't go back to grad school now. Somebody's got to make a living, right? So I postponed again law school, and I went to go work for affiliate sales and Discovery Channel for the Learning Channel launch. Worked there for about a year, and they said, "Wait a minute, we're going to be launching internationally in Asia, and it would be really great." And this was kind of, I guess, slightly sensitive now in this time. Somebody said, "We need somebody who's lived overseas and understands some of that market." And I had just come off living over there for 3 years, and I was de facto kind of that heritage. And they said, "Hey, you're a good negotiator. We need somebody in acquisitions, program acquisitions for international." And so I got the job, program acquisition in for the Asia territory. Thought this was a dream. It's like all the television shows that I had learned and saw. And also I speak, Korean, and I have a working knowledge of Japanese. So it was great. And then while I was there, kind of negotiating and picking shows that somebody else had already kind of shortlisted for me, that knowledge started getting more in depth. So it was acquisitions, but then they're like, "Wow, the acquisitions that you are selecting are doing well, Janet. What else can you do?" So they're like, "Well, maybe pre-sale." So I took one step before it became a finalized project. And they're like, "Oh, well, why don't you negotiate that show, Janet?" And then from there, they're like, "Oh, co-productions, originals. What do you think of that? Read the document, Janet." So my role and the depth of the creative process started getting larger. Um, and at that point, I was managing a lot more of the international co-productions and acquisitions, and working with the regions in building the Discovery Channel international programming lineup. And then at that point, I was then headhunted to come over to National Geographic International Channel in their heading up acquisition position. Because at that point, again, networks start off without, you don't start commissioning right away. At least back then you didn't. You had to start off with a library. So I thought this was going to be a great opportunity. So I jumped ship and again started off in acquisitions, and then realized that in order to amass a library that was competitive, you would have to start looking at co-production. So I started looking at projects before it was made. Again, expanded on that, and at that point, we did all the genres under unscripted: science, adventure, archaeology, history, and natural history. And but I always kind of leaned on the animal side probably a lot more. I was just naturally more interested in that. And when it came to that, I really focused, and that was my passion. And I continued to, work in that area. And then, Nat Geo International channels just exploded. And as part of that, I kept on, I was kind of the drumbeat of we got to have animals on our network. We got to have more animal show. Got to have more animal show. And I can't remember the period, but there was definitely a period where everyone thought blue chip shows are dead. It's just not going to happen. No one's really interested. It's an old fashioned topic. And I said, no, we still have to do it. So I kept on pushing that with my then boss, Jeff Daniels. He's like, oh my God, you're like the animal, whisperer here. So they made way. I guess I got to them, and we kept on doing shows about animals, and that was something that I personally took on, and found co-production relationships with like people like OSR, OSF, and Terra Mater. I've known Walter and that team, and ABC, Dione. I mean, these are my old friends from a long time ago. And at that time, because we were standard and non-standard television, you could have co-productions with broadcasters. So I really started looking at those opportunities and brought some of those shows to our international footprint. Anyhow, fast forward, I ended up having two lovely boys, and I actually went a little underground. I went a part time for about 3 years, and I worked specifically just on co productions across all the genres for our network. And then when my kids grew up, and they didn't think I didn't, I thought, oh, okay, they're going to be okay. My then boss David Haslington asked me to come back because they were launching a network called Wild, and they couldn't think of anyone more passionate about animals than me to run the development. But the condition was that they would need me to come back full time. And after much anxiety filled conversations, I decided, okay, I'll come back. And I apologize for all these dings.
That's right. You're
So
busy.
that was about 11 years ago. And Wild as a network has grown. And that was for the linear channel. And then in most recent times, over the last, I would say, 3 years, again, I have been a big proponent of we must, as a brand, continue, because the heritage of National Geographic was a lot of that was built on nature and animals. And I said we can't be a National Geographic channel without animals. But as big epic blue chip shows cost a lot of money, and there was like a dearth of, like, where did all the animal lovers go? And it was hard to justify like really big expenditures on shows until more recently, when we then became part of the Disney family. I'm really fast forwarding
Sure. Yeah.
myself
Yeah.
here.
Yep.
And again, my interest and my passion for animals then became even more elevated to the position now where I'm overseeing three different platforms for all content. We call ourselves Team Nature. And we're now I would say the guardians, or the folks who watch and manage the animal content across all of Nat Geo Wild, which is our linear channel, NGC, Nat Geo channel, and of course our Disney Plus platform on Disney Plus streaming platform.
That's amazing. I mean, what a journey of twists and turns. That's what I love about speaking to people like yourself, is that there was just no set path. And I think so many of us in this industry are like that. We just didn't set out to end up where we are, and yet I think it's hugely inspiring because it shows people that you don't have to have left school or college, university, with this dream of being the senior vice president of development and production of Nat Geo Wild, to get there. You just have to, you can change
Yeah.
as you go along. And I think it's fantastic. Very quickly, Nat Geo Wild, did it launch the same year, both in internationally and in the US? Or was that different time scale?
No, it was actually quite different. Nat Geo Wild actually started as a part of the Nat Geo channel, and then it branched off on its own. There was a lot more bandwidth to launch new channels internationally than there was in the U.S. And then in the US, I hope I don't get this wrong, we basically, there was a Fox reality channel that was then flipped over to Nat Geo Wild channel from the Fox side. And they
Gotcha.
converted those subscribers into the Wild channel. And that's how it was created. And if I may go back to your point, it is, um, it is about experience and also just your innate level of creativity. And my team is very diversified, and I really try and embrace people's diverse backgrounds and work experience because often some of the best people I've had work for me came from, they weren't like a biologist, or they weren't a specific, cinematographer, went to film school. They had kind of a outside the box approach, and I like that because um, we I want that different perspective, and it's been really a great creative process by having different voices, because television is, you have something like Disney Plus, you have a lot of people who may not even be an animal lover, but I still want them to come in and watch our show. So how do I look at a show and an idea with a bit more 360 view than just, I like animal shows, I'm a conservationist, I don't want to be myopic in that way. So having that depth of experience and approach is really helpful.
And it helps because there are so many programs that do cross those genres, right? I mean, you have, one program might be following a biologist and the work they're doing with a particular species. It may be a vet, like I know there's lots of very popular vet shows on Nat Geo Wild, or it may be specifically like landmark series about wildlife. So there's almost these crossing genres, almost reality cross with natural history, and of course that helps to know those genres. Um, I mean, I remember when I
100%.
think it was about 2005, maybe 2006, that they launched Nat Geo Wild in the UK or internationally. I was lucky enough to be a host of Rogue Raiders, which was a launch series in the UK for the channel. And I remember going to the big party and seeing it. And I was ecstatic because I was a wildlife person, and all I wanted was to turn on Nat Geo and see wildlife programming. And it seemed whenever I had the chance, I'd turn it on and it'd be something about history. And I'd be like, no, 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 I want to watch wildlife. So when that happened, I thought, I was a happy camper for sure.
Excellent, excellent, super, super fan.
Yes, exactly, exactly. So now, as senior vice president, how does your role work? So there's acquisitions, there's commissions, and I think what I would like actually is I think a lot of people get confused with these terms when they're not in the industry. First of all, could you just explain the difference between commissions, pre-sales, acquisitions, those type of things, so people just get an understanding?
No problem, no problem. So acquisition, when people use that lingo, hey, I work with acquisitions. It's usually a finished product. So the filmmaker or broadcaster will have funded the show either in part with a broadcaster, a distributor, or even by themselves quite often, or they had another mechanism of funding the project, and it's a finished project. And then they will basically own the show, but they will license it. Okay. And there's a lot of networks, for instance, especially overseas. Say a broadcaster in Korea made a show, but honestly, they're not a global footprint. They just made it for their market. Then that show has an opportunity to air everywhere else, after their license. So that's an acquisition. A pre-sale is, as you're making the show, when you get to kind of like that rough cut, when you have an assembly or a fine cut, often they will send it out to different potential buyers with the acknowledgement that, hey, it's not quite finished. So if you have any say input, narrator or some storylines that we might be able to edit, it can be yours, but usually for a higher surcharge. Okay. And then there's the co-production, which is, as the word says, it's kind of like, hey, we, have an idea. I'm going to put 50% of the money in, but we got to find other contributors. And with that contribution means that they have a say at the table, right? And that could be, you could have two co-produced, you could have
Absolutely.
three, you could have multiple. The more there is, the more voices you have to manage as a filmmaker. And I've been in those situations where it was my project and I brought in, it's kind of like organizing dinner, where you're saying, okay, dinner at my house, but you're bringing the salad, you're bringing the dessert, you're bringing the wine, and you're like, it's for six people. It's for six people. Oh, by the way, this person's
Right.
allergic to this, or, oh, we had that dessert last week, or wine, please bring at least six bottles. You're managing that, and then you kind of come in together, and then you hope that everyone likes the whole dinner, but that you are a party to. So it's a little bit more complicated, but often the sum is greater than the parts, and that's usually what we're hoping, in the mission. The last part is a commission, and that is, where you have an idea, whether it's generated by a third party production company or by your own self. um, you then hire somebody as a work of art. We are commissioning you to make this show. I will manage editorially. We think you can make it, and here's your timeline, here's your budget, and now go make it. But it's a work for hire. We own everything, full, no question. And I know as the world of viewers have all started to condense, for instance, streamers and brands that own global platforms, the more that commissioning is becoming more the norm for a lot of us.
And I was going to ask that, is there a particular one of those that makes up more of a percentage of your programming than another? And
I
that would
would
be
say
commissions,
right
would it?
now, to be honest with you, almost 85-90% of what we do is all commission.
Because that way
Yeah.
you are in control of the content. That way you're getting exactly what you want rather than what someone else wanted, they made, and then you're just paying a license for it.
Look, we still buy that, but because we're on a platform that is global, it's really key that we have all the opportunities to air the show around the world. So when you commission it, you know that you can have every right that you need. When you co-produce it, you're going to relinquish some of those rights to your partners, and whether or not our business
Sure.
model can handle that, it becomes a bit more tricky. So for us, it's better for us to just commission a show.
Got you. Yeah. Perfect. So what right I know a few years ago the Incredible Dr. Pol was, I think, your highest rated show on Nat Geo Wild. Is that still the case, or do you have a higher rating show right now?
Um, as a series on Nat Geo Wild, you are correct. Very, very. Thank you for knowing that fact. We do have several new shows that are nipping at that rating, and a lot of close seconds and thirds. But right now, I can absolutely say that for Nat Geo Wild, Dr. Pol is our superstar, and now going into our 11th season.
Wow. So is that kind of programming following a vet? He's a farm vet, I believe, isn't he?
Yes, he is.
Is that kind of programming your top rated programming across the board? I mean, it's a series, so obviously it differs probably from 1 hour specials. Where do you get the higher ratings for say one show? Would it be a 1 hour special, or would that still would an episode from that series still win the ratings?
Um, Well, on our linear channel on Wild, I think Dr. Paul would probably do better, only because there's this long-standing um, audience that
Sure.
automatically turns that on. For a special, we'd have to market it really properly, and it's kind of like finding sometimes the one-offs and specials, unless there's significant marketing for it. um, it's like finding a needle in a haystack. Sometimes you're just going through it, because there's no cadence of regularity to find that show. So our series tend to do a little bit better because it's like, Grey's Anatomy, it's on Thursday at 8 o'clock. Okay, I get it. It's like
Yeah,
ingrained in your
it's
brain once
ingrained.
you like the show. So,
Yeah,
I think, for us, it's like if you like vets, somewhere on our schedule, you're going to land on a vet. So,
right.
uh, it's that comfort zone that we offer. So, I think, right now I can honestly say it is Dr. Paul from its consistency side.
So, in terms of new programming, when you're looking towards the future and you're looking for these hit shows,
Mhm.
do you aim towards those kind of human-led character shows where you have someone like a vet? I mean, I'm assuming you don't always aim for vets because otherwise you're just going to be full of vet shows. But what would you say, like right now, what would you say that is important for you guys to be looking out for? What are you interested in?
I will say that yes, we do have a significant number of vets on our network. It's kind of like if you like this, you might like this. It's like, oh, um, it's in the same, I guess, type of shows. But that's not the
Sure.
only series that we do. We also do, animal rescue shows. We also have formats. We have Caesar Milan. We have Dog Impossible. So for us on Wild, specifically the linear channel, it's the finding the animal lover in all of us, whether you're a pet owner, whether you're a conservationist, whether you just like warm fuzzy little furry things, or whether or not you have a pet and you see that life of a vet. um, we have something for everyone, or even just as straight as like fun animal facts and takeaway. So we do user generated shows. We do more format shows, and we also have like our Shark Fest shows. So there's something for everyone. So I think it's about getting to know our network and the breadth of the types of shows, and then seeing how your work of art actually falls into that. And then on top of that, we have NGC, which is a little bit more of what I would say on a premium, more traditional blue chip shows that go in there as specials. And then of course, we have the blockbuster, landmark, bespoke series that will then land on our highest profile platform on D plus.
Awesome. Now, we're in a place now where the landscape is just changing technologically all the time. I mean, literally within a few weeks, something new comes out, a new gizmo. You can watch it here, watch it there. How do you see? I mean, Nat Geo Wild, but I think just TV in general, cable TV. What do you see the future, the evolution of TV? Is broadcasting going to stay very much a broadcasting channel, or are you expanding out? I know there's obviously an app, and video on demand. Do you see that kind of taking over the landscape of broadcast TV, or do you think it's not going to change too much in the near future, or really in the long term future?
Goodness, I mean, you're definitely hitting an area that I'm not. So far as television distribution, I'm not an expert, so I'll couch it that way first. But the
Sure.
the future for us is a lot of the D2C, the Disney Plus platform. I think there
Yeah.
will always be some form of linear channels that people are still comforted by. So I don't know what the percentage, on that is going to be. But if you look at any trade, you'll see trends all the time. I don't know about the video on demand. I think it's really a linear play versus your D2C streamers. And I'm so proud to be part of the Disney, family, because we are such a strong brand, and it's a hard to beat platform.
Is all of your programming going through Disney Plus now, or is it purely just shows made for Disney Plus via Nat Geo?
No, that's a very good question. A large portion of our platform, our linear platform, is moving over to Disney Plus, and that subject matter will continually evolve as the business gets more honed in.
Awesome. Um, Janet, I have a few questions from some of my mentees. I was literally before we jumped on our call, I had an hour's live Q&A with my mentoring group, and a few of them
Mhm.
wanted to ask you questions. And some of these kind of cross over
Sure.
what we've already spoken about. But first one is from Dave Glatz.
Sure.
And Dave says,
Okay.
can you give Dr. Pol his own channel instead of doing 8-hour blocks at the weekend? So that would be the Dr. Pol channel.
Oh my goodness. And what was this young gentleman's
This was
name?
Dave Glatz.
Dave Glass. Okay, first of all, Dave, you like, I think I need to get your address and so I can send you like, a little gift. Thank you so much. And I love the fact that you love Dr. Pol that much. Unfortunately, there is a Facebook page for Dr. Pol that you can go turn to. I think that there are probably other outlets for you to go and see him. But look, we're going to give you as much Dr. Pol as you want from us. If you go to Disney Plus right now, you can watch all of Dr. Pol's inventory. So, I would say go there, make it easy, and I would love his address if possible.
Okay, all right. Well, and that's great. I think that answers the question. Dr. Pol has his own channel on Disney Plus, so that's perfect. I didn't realize he was on there in the entirety. So every season of Dr. Pol is on Disney Plus.
Um, a
Good.
good portion.
Okay.
I may have to
Sure. Yeah.
retract that. A good portion of his episode.
No
Yeah,
problem.
but
No
there
problem.
are 10
So, and
seasons, so
this actually opens up a question for me in terms of the 8-hour block. What's the thought process behind that in terms of doing? And I don't know whether this is your department, but doing the 8-hour blocks of back-to-back series episodes on a weekend.
yeah.
How did that come about? Have you any idea?
Well, I think, I'll have to check the last time we did an 8-hour block. I'm like not recalling that. But again, once the show finishes and is in the queue to air, I go on to the next project. So,
Sure. Exactly. Yeah.
the
Yeah.
beauty and the science behind how we schedule is handled by people much smarter than I am. So, usually I think the science to that was built on the fact that we have such incredible, like David, super fans of this series. And it's also in the same way that
Yeah.
on the weekend I will go through a whole season and even repeat my a British Bake Off. I mean, 6 hours later I'm still on the couch reading.
Right. Yeah.
It's amazing that I haven't atrophied into the couch when I'm watching my baking shows. So I think it's
Right.
that. It's like once you get into it, the word binging is now part of our vernacular, as a viewer. So I think, it's allowed. We were kind of ahead of
Sure.
the curve by allowing even on our linear channel the opportunity to binge.
Yes, absolutely. I agree. And I have to say, I see your baking photos on Facebook time and time again. And so I can tell you're a fan of the British Bake Off. My kids, I have two boys who love the Great British Bake Off. They watch it all the time. That's their favorite show. So, and your bread
Oh,
looks amazing.
oh, thank you, thank you. It would be, I always fantasize like maybe I could be that import that comes from America to challenge the Brits. I don't know, but no, I
Fantastic.
do watch it. I did I think it was last year or the year before. I actually try to make all the technical challenges as just my own
Oh,
self
wow.
challenge. Some were harder
Yeah.
than others, but I think I did an
Oh, yeah.
okay job on that. But I'll do that again this year. When I get bored.
I'll have to tell my son Finn. He'll love that. He did what he's 8 years old, and he did the 15 layer
Oh my
cake.
goodness!
I think it was a toffee cake, and or caramel, and he tried that, and he did an amazing job of it, all on his own. It was incredible.
Wow, I think
He'll probably want to chat with you about your bread recipes.
not a problem. Happy to.
Right. So I have another question here from Fred Bell. Fred says,
Okay.
and this might not be your department, I'm not 100% sure, but there used to be the short film showcase with National Geographic. Is that something? Is that your department? I know I actually had a film in it, Path of the Pronghorn, a few years ago, and it was a National Geographic page on the website, and it was all short films, and they were showcased on there, and then they stopped doing it, and that shut down. I think maybe a year or two ago.
That would be part of the digital team that is part of another business unit under Susan Goldberg. and we do not manage that. So sadly, it did. I think the digital team, and I could be wrong here, but I believe that that business, I'm not sure, but it was under Susan Goldberg's editorial team. Sorry,
Okay.
I'm not able to give you
Sure. Yeah,
more
I thought it
information
might
on
not
that.
be your area, but yeah, no problem. So Emily Short asked, does Nat Geo Wild have any gaps in programming currently that they are looking to fill? So I think expanding on that, really, what are you looking for now? What would be your ideal program to fit into your
Um,
scheduling right
Good
now?
question. And I think we're at the a really great place right now. We have amazing series that I will say have all been doing quite well. From our animal rescue shows to our vets to other what I would say formats, people directed shows that are it's people and animals, so there's this great symbiotic relationship that we're featuring. Having said that's all in a very good place. I am really looking for, like, if you love vets or you love our rescue shows or you love Caesar Milan, think about what else would you want to see in that animal space, almost like that animal entertainment space. And that's what I'm looking for. I'm not, maybe that's too vague. I'm not articulating it in a crystal clear way, but it's almost like, if you like X, Y, and Z, then what is this going to be? The question mark. So that's kind of what I'm exploring. I know my team internally, our development team, is brainstorming what those aspects could be. And I would say pitch away, be creative. Your mentees are all animal lovers, and I would ask, what would you like to see on our network?
There you go. Exactly. We'll throw it back to them. Yes, that's good. Um, do you find that presenter-led shows now are less popular than those character-led shows? Like the character like Dr. Pole, who is a vet doing his job and being filmed,
Mhm.
as opposed to presenter-led. I'm not sure how many presenter-led shows there are these days on Nat Geo Wild. Are you finding that they're obviously less popular because Dr. Pole is the most popular show? But what's the viewpoint on that in terms
Mhm.
of people who are looking? Some of my mentees, if you like, are looking to be in the presenter space. They're looking to get into wildlife filmmaking. They want to film. They want to present. What's that kind of territory looking
Mhm.
like these days, or that genre?
Um, I will have to be 100%. It's a hard space for us on Nat Geo. Well, we have tried it with a myriad of different people and have not been that incredibly successful. I am dabbling in a project right now, and it looks very promising. But I think it's just about the right person and the right subject matter. There's a fine line from looking like you're a rent-a-host. That's my
Yeah,
thing, where you just got plopped in, and are you organic to this,
yeah,
and how do we make you feel like you're just this is your natural space, to then the host that really gives some great takeaways, and they have an incredible connective tissue that when they speak, it almost like it hits your heart and you really want to lean into it. It takes a special talent and a special person to do that. I'm still on the hunt for it. I'm always looking for that, but because of my past experience with not the greatest ratings, um, we tend to just say, okay, humans are secondary, let's let the true stars of the show
yeah.
shine. So we're a little gun shy when it comes to pulling the trigger for a new what I would say host, but I'm not opposed to it. Again, we're dabbling in our in that space. I mean, for instance, right now we have Brian Scary, who is the photographer and is organically embedded in our Secrets of the Whales series that's going to premiere on Earth Day. Just a little bit of an internal pitch here. Thank you for
Yeah, there you
letting
go.
me indulge. And he is
Yeah,
organically in the show. That works to us much better than it's kind of like come along on my journey. Although we're not opposed to looking
Yeah.
at that, the embed host, it works much better for us. Hope that's clear.
Yeah, no, I think it is. And coming from the host world originally myself, I know, you can be as a host, you can be embedded and passionate about something and be very authentic.
Hmm.
But then you can be handed a page of script that you then recite, and it's a completely different thing. It's a different skill set because you're
Yeah.
now trying to recreate something, and it's a very hard thing to do. And I totally agree. I mean, someone like Dr. Paul, who's there doing his job, that's his expertise is just coming through in what he does, and he's being filmed, and it makes it
Yeah.
very, very popular that way. I think I totally agree. I've got one here from Johnny Simpson Lee. Johnny is a shark videographer. He does 360 videography, and he asks, how
Mhm.
would he go about getting his 360 footage seen by Nat Geo Wild?
I think, look, that's a fascinating, be interesting to see how he captured that. I've discussed this approach. The best person for all things shark is Jesse dot Springer. Okay. JESSIE dot Springer, as I've said, at natgeo.com. That she is our shark queen. She is the person that basically gathers all of our show ideas and then helps us finalize who our finalists and ultimately commissions are for our Shark Fest. So she is a person, if you have an idea, if you have an approach, if you're a talent, please reach out to her.
That's awesome. Thank you for giving that contact. That's fantastic. So, in terms of pitching, when I know the number of shows that go from pitch phase to broadcast is ridiculously small. I can't remember, it's a 1% or it's like 0.1%. It's tiny. Um, what do you find in terms of, one, how many pitches or submissions does Nat Geo Wild get on a day or month or year? But two, because I'm sure it's a lot, it's either hundreds or thousands a week, I'm sure. Um, and in terms of the amount of pitches that you're seeing, how many of them are similar? Are you finding that lots of stuff that comes in is just a massive overlap, that there's very little unique stuff, or is it the opposite to that?
Um, Let me tackle that question by the genre of the type of program. We have hundreds of pitches that are pitched to us. However, I think my team has done a really good job of communicating what specifically we're looking for. So we don't get too many random. They're usually within our strike zone, But again, I always like to be surprised by getting those random ones that, I know this may feel like like a reach, but send it in. We'll tell you pretty quickly. So the pitch per month is in the hundreds. I can't really give you an exact scientific number of what that yields in an actual commission, but you're right. It is
Sure. Yeah.
small. Um, and it's definitely challenging when it comes to that, you know what I mean. But I think just to reiterate your question, because I now have forgotten what your original question was, because I started going off on a tangent in my brain. So could you reiterate your question?
No, it's okay. It's because I was trying to ask too many questions in one go. So,
Yeah.
it was really about number of, and as you said, hundreds a month.
Yeah.
And then, what are you seeing? Lots of different kind of new
Oh, yes, yes,
ideas,
yes, yes,
or do you
yes.
find a lot of repeating stuff?
Um, as a matter of fact, today I had a very interesting conversation where I was working with an author, like verified author of an idea, book and everything published. And coincidentally, the day before, and I've been working with his author for over a month now, the day before, I got almost the same exact proposal for a series, and they had never met. They didn't know about, I mean, this new company had never even heard of the work that this author had done. And again, I find it very rare that one exact idea is so original that some portion of that hasn't been nuanced before, you know.
Sure.
And then what it is, it's my job to see, who the company is, what the subject matter, what the access is, who's the talent behind it, and take that idea and then kind of squeeze it down, but also in a way expand it and make it original for our platform. You know, so there's a lot of brilliant people in this industry, a lot smarter than me, who, and a lot more creative, who are coming out with some brilliant ideas. But I will say, if you think that you're the only person coming up with this idea, you're probably going to be wrong, because there's lots of really smart people
Right.
around the world. So, what
Yeah.
I would say is that, if you're new to this process of creation of an idea, one, when you send in your projects, make sure that if there is a copyrighted thing, or never before, protect your IP. But then don't assume that only you've come up with ideas. So don't get offended if we already say, oh, we've already seen that. Because again, it's our job to also scour the earth for new ideas and get to know the context. A lot of time just going on ideas. A lot of our ideas, a good portion of our inventory is based on ideas that we have come up with internally.
Right. And then you're reaching out to certain production companies, or you're looking for particular people to be in those shows
Yes, 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 or create it.
or create it from scratch. Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent. And so Janet, for aspiring filmmakers out there, people who are literally trying to break into this industry. And
Mhm.
this is really across the board. So we're talking people who may want to be presenters, people who want to be DPs, camera people who want to produce, people who want to be, in development, wherever researchers, wherever they may be. What would be your one piece of advice to really help them get their foot in the door? Because this is not, as I reiterate many times, this is not a usual kind of industry where you follow the step-by-step guide and your foot's in the door. This is very unique.
Yeah.
And people are across the board. Say people want to do different things. What would be one piece of advice to help them get their foot in the door?
Well, the first thing would be welcome to the club, and your timing couldn't be better. Okay. Like I said, I spoke about, maybe it was, gosh, 10 years ago, where everyone said blue chip was dead. I would be on panels at Wild Screen or at other film festivals. We're like, Janet, is blue chip dead? We're like, no, it's not dead. It couldn't be more fruitful and bountiful and successful as it is now. There is literally an
Yeah.
arms race, is how I can describe the talent, get list right now, and people on the ground to help make shows for all of our premium platform, these streamers that are around. So if you're interested in this genre, one, do a little homework. And I know that sounds a bit, very, basic, but do your homework and you know what, reach out. There are people who are needed, guys and gals, and offer your resume up and say, I'm willing to do anything, because I think the natural history filmmaking genre, there's a lot of a bit of apprenticing, to grow your skill set, because it is very, singular. And there's no rhyme or reason. I actually, I would say, last 10 years that I've been in this role in the net, I almost had to school myself. So I've been going out in the field with producers, and I used to say I'm the glorified, PA with a credit card, because I wanted to learn the field production so I could do my job better. So over the last 10 years, I have been out in the
Yeah.
field, even if it's just for a few weeks or a couple weeks or there. I have put myself in there to understand the business, not to the scope of some of the most amazing cinematographers I work with, but I know just enough to speak a little intelligently and to appreciate what they do and to appreciate what efforts go in. So it helps me develop shows better. But it starts from reaching out to people. People are very busy, but be willing to do anything. And there are so many, I think right now the timing is great. You know who the big companies are. Look through who's making shows. Google it and find out those names and find out what position they may have and get in on it. As an entry level person and earn your way up. If you haven't tried this, offer your services, internship, anything to get in. And then I always used to say that television executives are inherently kind of lazy. So if you know of somebody and you do a great job, they'll hire you back.
Right.
Uh, and what you did in your last job doesn't really matter because you're doing a good job at the moment and in that job. And honestly, it's a great opportunity because if you do a good job, they will put more work in front of them.
Yeah, well said. And I think I hear that a lot. And I know that from traveling with crews, you want to be with people that you know, one, you can trust that's going to help get that production done at all costs and will jump into any role. There's nothing worse than having a person on a crew who turns around and says, "Oh, well, that's not my job. That's not my role." It's all about who can do what,
One
when it's needed.
hundred
Yeah.
percent,
Yeah, that's such valuable information. And just
100%.
lastly, Janet, I'm interested. I get questions a lot about technology and how technology is just changing production
Mhm.
and shows in general, whether it's things like thermal cameras or drones, all of this new technology that's coming out. Do you see that as a big draw in terms of new pitches? Is technology kind of big on the list in terms of we must have more shows with specialty drones in, or the footage captured in that way? Or are we just at a place now where most of that stuff is becoming affordable for every production to have, and it's losing its panache in some ways?
No, look, technology. Just let's just take our iPhone, as an example. What you can do with this phone is vastly different from what we could have done with this 2 years ago. And so imagine where a camera that could um, now transform and show you things that you may not have been able to see, or hear or realize. Whether it's a thermal camera, whether it's high speed, whether it's a tracking device, whether it's gyro stabilized, and the drone technology is immense. I think that it gives you that perspective that you've never seen before. You get closer, you have a different angle, you see from above, and you're just able to, see the secret life behind some of these animals. And I think that's what's fueling the interest because a bird that was shot, on camera 20 years ago is not the same perspective that you can execute now. So technology is huge. But then the number one thing is about the storytelling. How does the technology help with the basic storytelling? So it's a two-prong approach, but technology is definitely, yeah, the long lens on a stick isn't going to cut it anymore.
Awesome. Awesome. It's so good to hear that from someone in your position who's in that position of seeing those pictures come in and knowing. So many people ask me that question with the idea that they're trying to specialize in particular technology, and is that a good way to go? And so I think that answers the question. Janet, thank you so much for being on the show this morning. It's fantastic to have you here. Well, it's the afternoon where you are, of course, and this morning where I am. Thank you so much. I love hearing stories like yours where, you set out in one direction and you go over here and back there, and it just, all works out in the end. Did you ever go back and try and dissect a cow's eye again?
No, not at all. And I will say that I think I think it's for me being a woman of of color and also not the what I would say the job of choice from your parents and cultural background. If there's anything that I would love to impart and messages that um, don't let it's hard because you have so many pressures and so many people within your family, your culture, your I think I have this running joke that I still go to family functions and they're like, how are you doing? And I'm like, oh, I'm doing well, and well, you didn't become a lawyer. And we don't see you on television. How's that career going for you? And I'm like, what do you mean? And they're like, you're not Connie Chung, you're not on television, so you must not be doing well. And again, it's just the family, dynamics. And I think it's really important for people to follow their passion. And I know there are, obligations that you feel greatly about, but I think that when you're really passionate about something, again, I was a person who was like, no, animals must be shown. Even when everyone said blue chip is dead, go with your passion and fight for those and make it happen. Often you're the only one who's going to make it happen. So make those connective alliances and reach out to people. Reach out. People reach out to me. That's half our job, is to have an open door to meet, and I would hope to inspire new people and to give an encouragement. So be brave, stay on the path, and also reach out and make yourself known.
Fantastic. That's a beautiful place to end. That was wonderful. Thank you so much again. Really
No problem.
appreciate it. Is there, if people want to follow you and just kind of follow the journey with Nat Geo Wild and National Geographic Channel, can they do that online?
You know what? I have a my personal Instagram. Unfortunately, will be much more oriented to my baking. Yeah, but I would say our Nat Geo Wild Facebook and also our Instagram accounts is the best way. And again, I do have a personal Instagram, but it's much more oriented to my baking, my other
Sure.
creative side. But if you want to go there, just look me up on Instagram. But and I happily oblige. And of course, Facebook. I'm on personally on Facebook, and that has a tinge of more of my work. And I'm happy to accept friends there too. But again, if you are interested in reaching out
Fantastic.
to me directly or my team, I'll give you my assistant's email. It's jess.garros, jess.garros, GARROSS at natgeo.com. And, reference this podcast, and it'll ring a bell, and we'll connect you, at the very least, a half hour coffee with one of my team or myself. I will always assure you that I'm really trying to, help in being that extended mentor to people.
That's wonderful. I mean, it's so nice in this day and age to have that access. It really is, because, so much of this industry is closed off, especially for people trying to break in. And so having that is like gold. That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Janet. I can't wait to see you on the international version of the Great British Bake Off. I'm sure it'll happen one day.
Bring it on. Yeah,
Th-
exactly. All the best. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. If you've enjoyed this episode of the Master Wildlife Filmmaking Podcast, then please leave a rating and a comment. And remember to subscribe to keep up to date with the series' future episodes. You can find out more information about wildlife filming at jakewillers.com. And if you're interested in starting a career in the wildlife filmmaking industry or being mentored to further your career, then please visit jakewillers.com/mentorship. Thanks for listening.